Hello, everyone. This is such an honor to be here. So thank you so much, Algonquin, for inviting me to be here. And thank you to all of you for taking an hour out of your day to come and have this important discussion. This is truly an honor. When Susan asked me to come talk to you about balance, I thought, what an important subject in today's crazy, busy, overwhelming world. Right, so over the last few months, I've been putting aside some of my best tips and tools and strategies on how to live a balanced life. And as I put the first draft of this presentation together, the content was kind of falling short. It wasn't exciting me. It felt like we were just scratching the surface. So I had to think, I have 30 minutes to deliver a message to you guys. And I want my intention for these next 30 minutes is for it to be as impactful and as inspiring as possible. So I really had to ask myself, in these 30 minutes, what does a balanced life truly mean to me? And I realized that I can't talk about balance without talking about some of these bigger picture questions first. Because the truth is, the questions like, who are you? Not what do you study in school, or what do you do for a living, or what's your title, or who are you dating? It's who are you? And what truly matters to you? I'm going to walk down here so I don't fall off the stage, but what truly matters to you? And what do you value? And what do you want to create in this lifetime? And so I thought we need to discuss those questions, because then balance just becomes this fluid state of constantly checking in with yourself to making sure that the finite amount of energy you have in a day is going towards the right places. So today I'm really here to plant some seeds inside your mind. And I'm here to ask you some questions, because I don't have those answers for you. But I absolutely know one thing for sure. Each and every one of you have these answers inside of you. And I'm here to help you remember that. So the truth is, a decade ago, if you would have told me I'd be standing up in front of all you beautiful humans talking about living your most balanced and fulfilled life, I wouldn't have believed you. Because a decade ago, I was completely lost. I had no sense of who I was. I had no sense of self. I was, hanging around with the wrong group of friends and dating the wrong kind of guys, and I was just constantly searching for who is this person that I am. I couldn't answer these questions, who am I and what's my purpose? That wasn't even on my radar. And what I was getting in return was a lot of chaos and a lot of drama in my life, and really my outer world was simply a reflection of the chaos I was feeling inside. Right, can anyone relate to that? Yeah. So, which is strange, because when I was young, I was so filled with purpose and passion, and I was certain where I was going in life. I was a really confident child, which, it got me thinking. It really got me thinking. When we're young, we're so connected to the things that make us happy. We're so connected with our inner yearnings. These are actually my children, and one of my favorite parts about motherhood is getting to experience the world again through their eyes. And what they remind me of is that the things that truly make us happy are inside of us, not outside of us. Right, so when we're young, we're so connected with things that we want inside of us, our innate yearnings. We want to create things, right? We want to play, we want to move our bodies, we want to connect with each other. Right, but something happens when we get a bit older. I know as I reflect on my journey, it was around my teen years where the noise of the world started to get really, really loud. And I started to lose this sense of purpose inside myself. Right, so it's interesting. The average person in this room receives more stimuli in 1 week than our ancient ancestors did in their entire lifetime. I mean, that's a fascinating thought, isn't it? We are constantly being bombarded with ideas and with suggestions about what happiness and success looks like, right? But if we're not asking ourselves these really important questions like, who am I and what do I want? Then these ideas from other people are getting planted inside our subconscious, and we think these are the things that we need to be happy. Right, so we've become a culture of getting. We get, and we're really good at getting things. right? So we go out into the world and we get these things and we think our happiness is in the job or in that relationship or in that paycheck or in that title. And we're getting all these things, but have you ever noticed that after the getting is done, well, these things are all wonderful. After the getting is done, you're left with that momentary satisfaction until you're left yearning for something more again, right? So these things are loud. Who in here has an iPhone? Okay, so iPhone came out with some new screen time stats. They're now monitoring your screen time. So the average iPhone user has 4 hours and 55 minutes of screen time in a day. So that equals 72 days a year. 72 days in your year is spent on your phone, on the screen time, right? If you think about even the effects of social media alone, right? Constantly scrolling through the highlight reels of other people's perfect lives, right? Thinking, why doesn't my life look like that? Or if only I could have that, then I'd be happy. Or why wasn't I invited to that party, right? The noise of the world is incredibly loud. And what it's doing is it's ripping us out of our center. But life has a funny way of speaking to us. And I always say that life first speaks to us in whispers. And if we don't pay attention to the whispers, then it becomes more of a scream. And if we don't pay attention to the screams, then a problem will manifest inside of our lives. And if we don't go inward to look at the problem, then a catastrophe will happen. And it's safe to say, for a really long time in my life, I was ignoring life's whispers until a catastrophe did happen in my life, and many of the life structures started to crumble. And as dark and as depressing that time was in my life, I am so grateful for it. Because sometimes breakdowns are life's way of redirecting you. It's like life saying, come over here, right? I am the woman and the mother and the coach and the person I am today because of that time in my life. It was a time where I drew a line in the sand and I said, I will never feel like this again. I don't care what kind of internal work I need to do or what kind of journey I need to go on of self-growth, but I will never feel like that again. So breakdowns are life's way of redirecting us. I want you all to imagine right now an acorn. And just imagine this acorn and the potential inside this acorn. This acorn holds all of its potential inside of its little shell. And if you think about how magical that is, truly, it needs nothing extraordinary for it to grow into its potential, right? It just needs what nature offers. It needs the right nutrients from the soil. It needs the right sunlight. It needs the right moisture from the air in order for it to grow into its fullest potential, which is an oak tree. Like, how extraordinary is that that little nut could turn into that? And if you really think about it, it's almost as if there is this wisdom of life that's trying to get it somewhere, that's trying to help it move into this tree, into what it was destined to be. So today, I'm here to remind you, I'm here to show you that each and every one of you holds these seeds of potential inside of you. And just like the acorn, there is a wisdom of life that's trying to get you somewhere. And I believe that life speaks to us in the form of our yearnings, in the form of our passions, in the form of what lights us up, right? And it's actually these seeds of potential that are actually evolving you forward in your life. And these seeds have existed inside of every human being since the beginning of time. And it's been what has been responsible for evolving our culture forward. So it's interesting, I was at a dinner party a couple weeks ago, and I was having this conversation with a couple people, and someone said, our culture is not evolving forward. Like, we've got these millennials and these now Gen Zs that are taking over. Like, our culture is actually going backwards, right? And I thought that was a really interesting comment. And so just out of curiosity, who in this room is a millennial? So age 22 to 38. Okay, so there are many of us in here that are millennials. So there's a lot of stereotypes about us. And so when I got home, I wanted to do a little bit of research on some of this stereotyping, and I didn't have to get very far. In fact, all I had to do was put in millennials are in my Google search engine, and this is what auto-populated for me. So they're lazy. They're killing, stupid, idiots, the worst, entitled, screwed, and we're also killing the napkin industry, so that's great. Right? So, but it's amazing that these are the stereotypes that we're up against. And while I agree that some very questionable things came out of our generation, like selfies and the selfie stick and all those things, while I agree with that, I completely disagree with a lot of these stereotypes. But I do think that we are a generation who's confused. I think that we're a generation that deeply feels these potentials inside of us, but we don't necessarily have a model for what that looks like in the world. I think we're a generation that feels these deeper possibilities for our life, but maybe we don't trust them. We don't trust ourselves. So in order to really build on this theory of mine, I need to take it back. I need to take this story back to where your story began. And it didn't begin with the day you were born. It began way back. So I'm going to take this story back 50,000 years ago to when the modern human emerged. So not since the beginning of, since the beginning of time, but since the beginning of that humans were starting to behave as we know it today, so cognitively and behaviorally. So 50,000 years ago. And so if you think about that, that's not a big number. And I really want you guys to start to put yourselves inside this story. So each of you have 2,000 men or women in your lineage since the beginning of this time in history. Okay, so for all the ladies in the room, I want you to really get yourselves inside this story. And I want you to imagine your mother's hands on your shoulders, standing right behind you, and her mother's hands on her shoulders, and her mother's hands on her shoulders, 2,000 women back. And for the gentlemen in the room, I want you to do the same thing. I want you to imagine your father's hands on your shoulders and his father's hands on his shoulders, 2,000 men back. And so really think about that. This is when your story truly began. And recognize that every single one of these men and women had these seeds of potential inside them that was the guiding force for their life, whether they were tapped into it or not. This inner voice was inside of them, right? But that inner potential looked very different for the majority of those men and women, right? And so in order to really understand that, I want to walk you through a little model here. So does everyone know Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Taking you back to like grade 9 or 10, right? So Maslow was this psychologist in the 1940s who came up with this needs hierarchy that explained human behavior, right? So he said that humans are motivated by these, first they have to fill these lower level echelon of needs in order to move up in this hierarchy. So really think about the 2,000 men or women who came before you, and think about what their lives were like. Right? The majority of those lives were very much stuck in these lower level needs, right? In food, water, safety, shelter, security, right? So the yearnings that they felt inside were for survival for many of those generations, right? And their life's work was really to help create a better future for the next generation. And so think about the momentum of that. And then for the generations and generations, that's what life was about. Until there was a massive, massive leap forward in our culture when it came to our parents or possibly even our grandparents' generations, where they were freed up from merely surviving and they were able to really go into this middle level of needs, which is all around achievement, status, recognition, success, material gains. Right? And we're so lucky because we live in a country where we have access to education, we have access to jobs. And here now the millennials are coming into the world, right? And we've got all of these needs met for us. And now we're entering into the workplace, we're entering into the world, and we're saying, here we are, we're ready to make a difference. And we're quickly deflated, right? And we're quickly deflated because we're saying, wait, I'm yearning for something more. I'm yearning for something more. And I had experience I was inside a corporate job for 9 years. And it was an amazing, amazing job. I was surrounded by the most wonderful humans. But for 9 years, I was inside a job that didn't fulfill me. I knew that there was these gifts and these talents and these passions inside me that wasn't on my job description in this job. Right? But for 9 years, I tried to push that down. And I tried to kind of quiet that inner voice down until life's whispers wouldn't let me ignore it anymore, and I took the jump to do this full time, right? And what I discovered is that these yearnings inside of us, what we are yearning for is self-actualization, which is the tip of this triangle, which is really to be all that one can be, right? And it's not that we're the generation that gets to experience this. This is the desire to self-actualize is happening across generations, across the world, right? But what's unique about millennials and Gen Zs is that we're at a point in our lives where we can actually take our work and turn it into life work. Like, look, this is what we're telling employers we want in the workplace. We're telling our employers that we want purpose and passion and impact. This is what we want to feel every day, right? Whereas previous generations, they wanted growth and balance and security, right? So I really want you to feel the momentum behind you. Feel that momentum behind you and all of the life's work from your ancestors who came before you. And now it is up to you in this lifetime to be all that you can be, to realize these potentials, because no one will do this work for you. And this really is an inside job. I need to pause for a second here, and I need to talk about the difference between entitlement and worthiness, because I think entitlement was probably the biggest stereotype that I heard when I was doing some of this research about millennials. So there is a big difference between entitlement and worthiness. Entitlement has a very distorted or weak sense of self, whereas worthiness has a very strong, authentic sense of who you are, right? Entitlement says, I am entitled to living the life of my dreams. Whereas worthiness says, I am worthy of living the life of my dreams. Entitlement says, the world owes me something, which means that the power is outside of me, my happiness is outside of me, and you owe me that thing. Whereas worthiness says, the world owes me nothing. It's up to me to claim it. The power is inside of me, and it's up to me to stand for these bigger possibilities of my life, because no one will do the work for you. So I want to leave you with this last thought. The things that excite you, the things that light you up inside, the things that impassion you, follow those things. They will lead you to your potential. You don't have to know where you're going. It's one next step at a time. And like I said earlier, no one will do this work for you. Recognizing that you standing for these fuller potentials of your life actually is evolving our culture forward. And you can imagine what you would be doing for our future, for the future generations to come. And lastly, when you let your light shine, you give others around you permission to shine theirs. So together we truly can light up this world. Thank you very, very much, guys. This was such an honor. Thank you. I just want to let you know, This is my website, tarynwatts.com, and we can continue this conversation together. You can subscribe to a mailing list I have on my homepage. If you scroll down a little bit there, there's a Let's Keep in Touch bar. And every week I send out weekly pep talks to help you, remind you of these things and remind you of these big picture questions. And so if you would like to keep in touch, I would love to keep in touch with you as well. So thank you very much.